Pakistan has declared an open war with Afghanistan following months of conflict. The neighboring nations have been conducting tit-for-tat strikes since October. The fighting has so far killed more than 70 people. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz has the details.
Well, what we're seeing now is a major escalation between Pakistan and Afghanistan's Taliban-led government in what Pakistan's defense minister is calling a, quote, open war. Now, as we've been reporting, Pakistan launched overnight airstrikes across Afghanistan, including the capital Kabul and in Kandahar as well. Now, this is the heart of the Taliban's power. Now, the Taliban have said that they've responded by targeting Pakistani military positions, with both sides claiming heavy casualties and also battlefield gains. We've seen those images from hospitals showing the wounded, but frankly, the true number remains impossible to independently verify. Now, what makes this especially dangerous is that Pakistan now appears to be directly targeting sites tied to the Taliban government itself, and not just alleged hideouts of what's known as the Pakistani Taliban or Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, also known as the TTP. Now, Islamabad has long accused the Taliban of sheltering the TTP, which Pakistan says launches attacks from Afghan soil against Pakistani forces. Now, this marks a clear shift from a shadow conflict to direct confrontation. Now, on the diplomatic front, there is a scramble to contain this. Iran has offered to help facilitate dialogue. China has publicly called for de-escalation, and there are also reports of Turkey and Saudi Arabia engaging behind the scenes after earlier mediation efforts, including a ceasefire brokered with Turkey and Qatar back in October, failed to hold. Now, for the Trump administration, the stakes here are high. A widening conflict risks opening space for militant groups, destabilizing a nuclear-armed Pakistan, and complicating U.S. calculations at a moment when Washington is already weighing how to deal with Iran, which of course borders both Pakistan and Afghanistan. Now, I've been covering both of these countries for nearly 2 decades, and I have never seen this relationship reach this point. The risks for both countries are enormous, and a prolonged conflict that destabilizes this region once again would have serious global repercussions. The bottom line is this: this is no longer a routine border clash, and when airstrikes are hitting a capital and both sides are speaking in the language of war, miscalculation becomes the greatest danger, and right now, that risk is extremely high. Back to you.
Imtiaz Tyab, thank you. CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd joins me now. Sam is also a former assistant secretary for counterterrorism at the Homeland Security Department. Sam, thanks so much for being with us. It's really sobering to hear Imtiaz's report there and the tensions, the level that the tensions are at right now. Are there any broader security concerns that the United States might be worried about when it comes to this conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan?
Well, certainly, as our colleague Imtiaz pointed out, any time you have a nuclear-armed country engaged in a conflict, there are real concerns about what kind of capabilities that country may be willing to use to accomplish its objectives. In the immediate term, when it comes to risks to Americans and U.S. national security, I am deeply concerned about the risks of militants and terrorists on both sides of this conflict and around the world becoming directed or inspired to engage in violence as a result of what started as cross-border skirmishes and have now expanded into direct attacks on cities. There are sectarian aspects to this conflict, there are militants involved, and there are terrorist groups on both sides of the border that could feel energized and required to engage in violence in light of what's happening.
Well, let's turn to Iran. Where do talks stand now? And how likely at this point is it that we'll see some kind of military confrontation?
Well, when it comes to where diplomacy stands, the short answer is it depends who you ask. According to President Trump, he is disappointed and not pleased with the status of negotiations. No further information on that, but he expressed that displeasure on Friday. At the same time, in an interview with our colleague Margaret Brennan, the Omani foreign minister who is mediating negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, indicated that talks are progressing quite well and that, in fact, the Iranian regime is willing to give up its nuclear enrichment capabilities. It would really be the first time in history that they've been willing to do that. So the Omanis are indicating a much rosier picture regarding the state of negotiations than President Trump himself. In terms of are we closer to a military strike? It sure feels that way in light of the U.S. and other governments encouraging their citizens to leave the region, and the U.S. and other governments drawing down certain diplomats in the region, which typically means that there are real concerns and analysis that war or more violence is imminent.
Sam, earlier today, President Trump said this of Cuba, that, quote, we could very well end up having a friendly takeover. What's your reaction to that statement?
My reaction is we may be seeing a new model of intervention under the Monroe Doctrine, or the Monroe Doctrine in the Western Hemisphere under President Trump, in which President Trump and his administration unseat the leadership, the president of Cuba, but like they did with Maduro, but keep other parts of the government in place to avoid some kind of chaotic fallout. That may be what President Trump is referring to, but when it comes to plans for the Western Hemisphere, we are just waiting to see.
All right, Sam Vinograd. Sam, thank you very much.